The storm began with a hiss that grew into a scream. Over the metal plains of Arcanine, black clouds boiled and spat acid rain. The drops hit the ground with a sharp hiss, burning holes in the rusted surface. Nothing living stayed outside in that kind of weather, but one small creature had no choice. Near the wreck of a crashed transport ship, a tiny albino hatchling tried to crawl under a broken panel. Its pale scales were too soft to resist the acid. Each drop left a faint scar on its white skin. The creature whimpered a weak sound swallowed by the storm. It had been born only a few hours ago. Its siblings were gone, their shells melted. Its mother, a proud Zolthori female, lay still beside the wreck, her armor cracked open. The hatchling did not understand death, only that she would not move again. The world smelled of metal, smoke, and pain. The hatchling tried to crawl closer to the body for warmth, but the acid rain burned its feet. It gave a small cry and stopped moving. Its breath came in short, sharp gasps. The acid began to eat through the thin shelter above its head. Soon, even that would fall apart. The creature's eyes, large, silver, and full of light, blinked slowly. It could see the storm, the lightning, and something else moving in the distance, a shaped dot at first. It thought it was another predator come to finish it off. The figure moved fast, low to the ground, wrapped in a thick coat. Sparks of blue light flashed as it carried a torch that cut through metal like butter. The figure was coughing, muttering words that the hatchling could not understand. It was a human. Jace Renner was not supposed to be there. The colony had been abandoned years ago, and no one sane went out during an acid storm. But he needed parts, ship-grade parts. His old hauler was running on hope and duct tape. He moved from wreck to wreck, scanning for anything still working. His visor fogged up from the heat. When he stepped through the burning mist and saw the tiny white creature, he stopped for a moment. He thought it was a piece of bone. Then it moved. He cursed under his breath. Ah, hell, it's alive. He bent closer. The creature's body was covered in burns. Its chest rose and fell fast, shallow. Jace's helmet sensor flashed warnings: acid concentration to high, temperature unstable. He looked up at the wreck, saw the dead Zolthori mother, and then back at the small survivor. Of course, he muttered. Of course it had to be one of them. The Zolthori were infamous. They ruled half the Orion arm with claws and fire. Humans were insects to them, useful only as slaves or test subjects. Jace had seen what they did to people. He could leave the creature. No one would blame him. But as he turned away, he heard a sound, a weak chirp. It wasn't a roar or a hiss, not a predator's cry. It sounded like a baby. Jace closed his eyes and groaned. Damn it, kid. He threw off his outer coat, wrapped the hatchling in it, and lifted it gently. The creature squirmed weakly but didn't fight. Its claws barely scratched his gloves. Acid burned through the fabric and stung his hands. But he held on. All right, you win. Let's get you out of this mess. He turned toward the horizon where his camp beacon blinked faintly through the storm. Every step was pain. The acid hissed on his boots, melted the soles, burned through layers of synthetic leather. His visor's oxygen levels dropped. He could barely see. The hatchling made small noises, pressing itself against his chest, its body trembling. Don't die on me, little guy, Jace muttered, stumbling over a pipe. I didn't risk my ass just to carry a corpse home. When he finally reached the camp, a small dome made of salvage ship plating, he slammed the door and collapsed. The sound of the storm became a low rumble outside. Inside, the air was thick and warm. Jace peeled off his gloves. His skin was red and blistered, but he didn't care. He looked at the bundle in his coat. The hatchling's breathing was faint. Hang on, he said. I've got something for burns. I think. He opened a drawer full of scavenged parts, pulled out a medkit older than he was, and activated it. The device hummed weakly, projecting a pale blue light. He poured the gel over the creature's skin. The hatchling hissed in pain but soon stopped moving. Jace frowned. That's either a good sign or a bad one. He rigged a heating coil under a small crate and turned it into an incubator. Then he placed the creature inside, adjusted the temperature, and sat down with a sigh. He watched the little being through the glass. It looked strange, almost fragile, like something that didn't belong to this brutal world. Guess you're just as unlucky as me, Jace said quietly. Stuck on a dead rock, no family, no friends, the creature twitched in its sleep. Making a soft noise, Jace smiled for the first time in weeks. The storm outside raged through the night. The metal walls shook, and acid dripped from the roof like rain on tin. Jace stayed awake, repairing an old generator and checking on his tiny guest, when dawn came. The air outside cleared a little. Pale sunlight filtered through the smoke. The hatchling woke, blinking at the light. Its eyes reflected the color of the sky. It made a small sound, half hiss, half chirp. Morning, kid, Jace said, sipping from his canteen. You're tougher than you look. He offered a bit of nutrient gel on a metal spoon. The hatchling sniffed it, then licked it carefully. It made a face, well, what Jace thought might be a face, and looked at him again. Yeah, I don't like it either, he said with a grin. But it keeps you alive, for a moment. They simply stared at each other, the burned mechanic and the pale alien child. Both survivors of a world that had forgotten them. Outside, acid rain fell again, but softer now, like a whisper. Inside, under the hum of a broken generator, a small bond began to form between a human who couldn't stop caring and a creature that had never known kindness, and though neither of them knew it, that small act of mercy would one day change the fate of two entire species. Days passed inside the small dome of metal and wires. The acid rain never truly stopped on Arca 9, but Jace Renner had learned to live with it. He worked in the mornings fixing old generators, checking scanners for any signs of scavenger drones, and melting down old ship parts for metal. In the evenings, he took care of the hatchling. The small creature grew stronger every day. Its skin, once covered in burns, started to heal under the thick gel he had made from salvaged med packs. The pale scales glowed faintly in the low light, smooth and almost shiny. When Jace first found it, it had been silent most of the time. Now, it made small sounds, clicks, chirps, and soft growls that Jace guessed were its way of talking. He called it Ghost because of its color and the way it moved. The hatchling would slip between shadows, silent as mist, always watching him with bright silver eyes. Ghost, he said one morning, tightening a loose bolt on a panel. You're eating more than me now. You planning to pay rent or what? The creature blinked at him, head tilting to one side. Then it chirped loudly and climbed onto his toolbox. Yeah, I know, Jace said, smiling. You're royalty now. Huh? I'm just your servant. He didn't mind. In truth, the little creature was the only thing keeping him from going mad. The days were long and lonely on a dead world. The wind outside screamed through metal ruins like ghosts of old miners. Without ghosts, the silence would have eaten him alive. At night, Jace told stories. He didn't know if Ghost understood him, but it listened. Its silver eyes followed every move, every sound. Back on Earth, Jace said one evening, we used to have blue skies. Real blue, not this rusty mess. People would fly for fun, not just to escape. There were oceans, cities, light everywhere. Ghost tilted its head, making a soft trill. Yeah, Jace said, smiling faintly. You'd like it. You could hide in the clouds. He looked at the creature closely. Its shape was changing, its limbs stronger, its back forming tiny ridges that looked like wings. It wasn't just a baby anymore. It was evolving, and fast. Guess your people don't waste time growing up, he said. Maybe one day you'll fly for real. He said it like a joke, but a small part of him believed it. One morning, Jace woke to the sound of alarms. The motion sensors outside had triggered. He rushed to the monitor, wiping dust from the screen. A shape was moving near the wrecks, not an animal, not acid rain, something mechanical. A drone. Jace cursed under his breath. Damn it, scavengers again. He grabbed his old plasma torch, checked the battery, and looked at Ghost. Stay here. You hear me? Stay. The hatchling hissed softly, lowering itself as if it understood. Jace stepped outside, the acid-resistant coat flapping in the wind. The rain burned against the fabric. He moved between rusted ships, scanning for the drone. When he found it, his stomach turned. It wasn't a scavenger drone. It was Zolthori, made, sleek, black, and shaped like a flying blade. The drone hovered silently above the wreck. Its sensors glowed red as it scanned the area. When its light passed over Jace, the drone froze for a second, then turned sharply toward his shelter. "Oh no you don't," Jace muttered. He aimed the torch and fired. A beam of blue plasma hit the drone's side, melting part of its armor. It spun wildly and crashed into the mud, sizzling in the acid rain. Jace ran over and kicked it aside. The device sparked, still alive. Before he could destroy it completely, it emitted a short pulse of light, a signal. He stared at it, realization striking like a punch. "You called someone, didn't you?" The Scifi would come looking for their missing hatchling, and when they did, they wouldn't care who had saved it. That night, Jace couldn't sleep. He sat near the heating coil, staring at the small creature curled beside him. Ghost had fallen asleep after eating, its chest rising and falling gently. Jace sighed. "They're coming, kid. Your people. And if they find you here..." He didn't finish the thought. He leaned back, rubbing his face. "I should let them take you. You belong with your own kind. I'm just a broken man on a dead planet." But when he looked at Ghost again, his heart twisted. He remembered the first time he'd seen it crying in the acid rain. He remembered how it had tried to crawl to its dead mother. No, he couldn't let them take it. He reached out and gently placed his hand on Ghost's back. The scales were warm now, soft and alive under his touch. The creature stirred, eyes blinking open. "Hey, easy," Jace said softly. "Go back to sleep. You're safe." The hatchling made a small purring sound and closed its eyes again. Jace whispered, "I promise, Ghost, I'll keep you safe. Whatever it takes." The next day, Jace started preparing. He reinforced the dome, added extra shielding, and hid his signal beacon. He modified the old generator to act as an energy jammer. It wouldn't fool the Scifi for long, but maybe long enough for him to figure something out. Ghost followed him everywhere, curious about everything. It tried to play with his tools, bit wires, and once nearly turned on the plasma torch. "Hey." Jace laughed, pulling it back. "No touching that, you maniac." Ghost chirped loudly, almost like it was laughing too. Jace shook his head. "You're trouble. Pure trouble." He couldn't help smiling though. That evening, when the storm calmed, Ghost climbed onto his shoulder for the first time. Its claws were gentle, its small body warm against his neck. Jace froze, afraid to move. "All right," he said quietly. "Guess that means you trust me." The hatchling made a happy sound outside. The sun set behind the clouds, painting the sky in dull orange light. The acid rain shimmered like fire. Inside the dome, human and alien sat side by side, two lost souls sharing a fragile peace. But peace never lasted long on Arcan 9. That night, the scanners picked up new signals, multiple contacts, moving fast through the atmosphere. Jace's heart sank. The Scifi had found the distress call. He looked at Ghost, sleeping under the heating lamp. "Guess it's time," he whispered. He stood, checked his torch, loaded a few explosive charges into his belt, and sealed the shelter doors. He wasn't a soldier anymore, but he still remembered how to fight. He walked to the small window, watching as red streaks lit the sky. Ships were landing in the distance, cutting through the storm. Jace took a deep breath. "You saved me from giving up, kid. Now it's my turn to save you." Outside, the ground shook. The first Scifi landing craft touched down, sending waves of acid wind across the plain inside. The human mechanic switched off the lights and whispered his final promise. "No one's taking you from me, Ghost, not while I'm still breathing." The night sky above Arcan 9 turned red. Thunder rolled like metal tearing apart, and the acid rain hissed louder than ever. Jace Renner stood by the window of his small dome, watching bright lights fall through the clouds as Scifi ships, smooth and sharp like blades of black glass. They were coming for Ghost. Inside, the little hatchling slept peacefully under the warm light, unaware of the danger. Jace looked at it for a long moment. He felt the old ache in his chest again, the one that came from losing too many people. Too many wars. He had promised himself he would never fight again. Now he didn't have a choice. He turned off the heating coils to cut the power signature. The lights dimmed and shadows filled the room. He opened a drawer, pulling out an old energy rifle. It was rusty, half broken, but it would still shoot. He checked the charge cell enough for maybe 10 shots. Not much. He looked at the hatchling. "You better stay quiet, Ghost," he whispered. "We're gonna have visitors." Ghost opened one eye and chirped softly, as if sensing the fear in his voice. Jace smiled faintly. "Yeah, I know, buddy. Me too." Minutes later, the ground began to shake. The landing ships touched down not far from the shelter. Jace could hear the engines screaming, the metal wings slicing the air. He took a deep breath, pressing his back against the wall, trying to calm his heartbeat. Outside, heavy footsteps hit the ground. The Zalthori soldiers had arrived. Their voices echoed through the storm deep, sharp, and full of command. "Scan the area," one of them ordered. The hatchling's signal originated here. Jace clenched his jaw. He could see their shadows through the cracks of the metal wall tall. Reptilian figures with glowing armor. Their eyes cut through the dark like knives. He whispered to himself, "Stay calm, Jace. You've dealt with worse." Maybe. A loud crash shook the shelter. One of the soldiers hit the door with a heavy weapon. The metal groaned. Jace quickly picked up Ghost and placed him in a small crate lined with blankets. "Don't move," he said quietly. "No matter what happens, you don't make a sound." Ghost looked up at him with wide, silver eyes. Jace tried to smile. "I'll be right here, okay?" The hatchling made a low, sad chirp, but stayed still. The door burst open. Steam and acid rain poured in as 3 Zalthori soldiers stepped through, their armor glowing green. The leader, a tall figure with a black crest running down his head, looked around the room with disgust. "Human," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "You harbor what is not yours." Jace raised his hand slowly. "You mean the kid?" "Yeah, I found him, alone, dying in the rain. Didn't see anyone else coming to help." The commander's eyes narrowed. "That hatchling is of royal blood. It belongs to the brood. You are guilty of interference," Jace snorted. "Funny, I thought saving a life was the good kind of interference." The commander stepped closer. Towering over him, "You presume to claim kinship with a Zalthori hatchling? Foolish human. You don't even understand what it is." "I understand enough," Jace said. "It was cold, scared, bleeding. You left it to die." For a moment, the commander was silent. Then he extended one clawed hand. "Give it to us. Now." Jace looked at the hand, then back at the crate behind him. His muscles tensed. "Not a chance." The air crackled. One of the soldiers raised a weapon, a long staff that glowed blue at the tip. "Defiance will not be tolerated." Jace moved first. He dove to the side, grabbing his rifle and firing a shot. The energy bolt hit the soldier's armor, exploding in a flash of light. The Zalthori staggered but didn't fall. Jace ducked behind a metal table as plasma fire tore through the room, melting walls and equipment. Ghost cried out from the crate. Jace's heart jumped. "Stay down, kid," he shouted. He rolled across the floor, kicked over a fuel canister, and fired again. The canister exploded, filling the air with fire and smoke. The Zalthori commander hissed in rage. Jace ran through the smoke, coughing, his lungs burning. He grabbed Ghost's crate and dashed for the back exit of maintenance hatch leading to the tunnels. Behind him, the commander shouted, "Stop him!" A plasma bolt grazed Jace's shoulder, spinning him round. Pain shot through his arm. He bit his lip, refusing to scream. He turned and fired blindly, hitting another soldier in the chest. Sparks flew, armor cracked, and the alien fell. Jace stumbled into the tunnel and slammed the hatch shut behind him. He leaned against the cold wall, gasping for air. The hatchling peered out from the crate, making a worried noise. "I'm okay," Jace said, breathing hard. "Just a scratch. We gotta keep moving." The tunnels under the plane were dark and narrow. Old pipes dripped with acid. Jace's boots splashed through puddles as he carried Ghost close to his chest. Every few seconds, the tunnel shook from explosions above. "They're not giving up," he muttered. "Figures." He stopped at an old junction where several tunnels crossed. He knew this place. He mapped it during his scavenging runs. If he rerouted power through the old reactors, he could overload the coolant lines. It would cause a chain reaction, maybe enough to block the tunnels behind him. He set Ghost down gently. "You stay here, okay? I need to set a few traps. The hatchling followed him with its eyes, chirping nervously. Hey, Jace said, turning to it. You trust me? Ghost tilted its head, then nodded slightly. That's my kid, he whispered with a smile. He started working fast, using old wires, plasma cells, and broken panels. Sparks lit the dark tunnel as he connected the circuits. The hum of energy grew louder, but then a noise echoed down the tunnel, metal claws scraping stone. The Zolthori were coming. Jace rushed to finish, flipping the final switch. The lights turned red. All right, let's move. He scooped Ghost up and ran toward the far exit. Behind them, the tunnel glowed brighter and brighter until boom. The ground shook violently. Fire and smoke filled the tunnel as the coolant lines burst, flooding the passage with acid steam. The explosion cut off the Zolthori pursuit, at least for now. Jace fell to his knees, coughing, his ears ringing. Ghost crawled up his arm, pressing its head against his neck. I told you, Jace said weakly. I'm not letting anyone take you, the hatchling chirped softly. Wrapping its small wings around his hand above them, the storm continued to roar. But somewhere far away, in the glow of a destroyed landing zone, the Zolthori commander looked at the rising smoke and whispered, he will not escape. That night, as Jace and Ghost rested inside a collapsed bunker, Jace stared at the stars through a broken window. His arm throbbed, but he didn't care. He thought about Earth, about people who fought against impossible odds, about humans who never stopped trying. He looked down at Ghost, sleeping peacefully beside him, and smiled. Guess you're one of us now, he said quietly. And we humans, we don't quit. The wind outside howled like a warning, but Jace didn't listen. He closed his eyes and whispered, tomorrow, we fight again. The acid rain had stopped for the first time in weeks. The air above Arcanine was quiet, almost peaceful, but Jace Renner knew it would not last. He sat beside the broken wall of the old bunker, watching thin rays of light push through the clouds. Beside him, the albino hatchling Ghost was awake and alert, its silver eyes scanning the sky. Enjoy it while it lasts, Jace said softly. They'll be back soon. He pulled out a small transmitter core from his pack. The device blinked weakly. It was a distress beacon, one that could send a signal into orbit if he could fix it. Maybe someone out there, human or not, would hear it. But the power cells were nearly dead, and his tools were old. Ghost tilted its head, chirping curiously. I know, Jace said, running a hand through his messy hair. It's a long shot, but humans do long shots. It's kind of our thing. The hatchling climbed onto his shoulder, resting its warm body against his neck. For a moment, Jace smiled. Then the ground trembled. The Zolthori had returned from the ridge above. Black shapes appeared through the mist, large armored figures moving with purpose. The commander led them, his dark crest shining faintly under the dull sunlight. Behind him marched 6 soldiers into flying drones, each scanning the area, spread out. The commander ordered, the human cannot hide forever. Jace cursed under his breath. He couldn't run anymore. He was too tired, too wounded, and the bunker was surrounded. The only thing left was to fight smart like a human. He looked at Ghost. All right, buddy, time to get clever. He opened his toolkit, pulling out plasma batteries, broken circuits, and wires. His hands worked fast, even as his fingers shook from exhaustion. Ghost watched closely, mimicking his movements with tiny claws. Jace smiled faintly. You're learning, huh? Guess you really are my kid. He connected the last wire, and the small pile of junk began to hum. It wasn't a weapon, at least, not exactly. It was a trap. He placed the device near the tunnel entrance and whispered, that should slow them down. Minutes later, the first Zolthori soldier reached the bunker. He scanned the entrance, then stepped inside. The device beeped once. Then it exploded with a flash of blue light, releasing a wave of magnetic energy. The soldier's armor shut down instantly. He fell to the floor, paralyzed. Jace took a deep breath. One down, but the others were not far behind. The commander stepped forward, his voice echoing. You cannot win, human. Give us the hatchling, and your death will be painless. Jace laughed dryly. Yeah, I've heard that one before. He grabbed his rifle and moved deeper into the bunker. Ghost stayed close behind, wings half open. The air filled with smoke and dust as plasma fire hit the walls. Jace ducked, firing back with quick bursts. Each shot was aimed to delay, not to kill. He didn't want a war, he just needed time. Come on, he muttered, glancing at the transmitter core. Just a little more power. Ghost climbed onto the console, pressing its small claws against the device. It began to glow faintly under its touch. Jace blinked. Wait, are you doing that? The hatchling chirped, and the glow grew brighter. The transmitter powered up. Jace stared, amazed. Well, I'll be damned. You're full of surprises. Outside, the Zolthori commander roared in anger. Destroy the structure. The soldiers fired heavy plasma cannons. The bunker walls cracked. Chunks of metal fell from the ceiling. Jace pulled Ghost close as fire erupted around them. He coughed through the smoke. Hold on, kid. We're not done yet. He turned back to the transmitter and slammed the power button. The beacon activated, sending a signal straight into the stormy sky. A bright column of light shot upward, cutting through the clouds. The commander saw it and roared. No! Stop him! 3 soldiers rushed inside. Jace fired until his rifle clicked empty. He grabbed a wrench from the floor and swung it at the nearest one, hitting the soldier's arm joint. Sparks flew, and the alien stumbled. Jace moved like a man who had nothing left to lose fast. Desperate and wild, he wasn't the strongest or the fastest. But humans had something the Zolthori never understood: heart. He kicked over a power cell and shouted, Ghost? Now, the hatchling leapt from his shoulder, spreading its small wings. They glowed faintly white. A shockwave of light burst out, blinding the soldiers for a moment. Jace grabbed Ghost and ran toward the back exit. Behind them, the bunker started collapsing. Fire and dust filled the air. Jace's lungs burned as he stumbled outside into the storm. The sky had turned green from the acid clouds. In the distance, the beacon still glowed, shining like a pillar of hope. The commander stood near the landing ship, watching it with fury in his eyes. Enough, he hissed. And this, he raised his plasma cannon, aiming directly at Jace. Jace turned, saw the weapon charging, and whispered, Guess this is it? But before the cannon fired, Ghost moved. The hatchling jumped out of his arms, landing in front of him. Its small body glowed brighter than before, light pouring from every scale. A strange hum filled the air. The rain stopped falling. Jace stared in shock. Ghost, what are you? The light grew blinding. Ghost let out a sound, not a cry of fear, but something deep and powerful, like the roar of a storm. The energy waves spread outward, hitting the ground, the ships, the soldiers. The acid in the rain turned to harmless vapor. The plasma weapons fizzled and died. The commander staggered, his armor sparking. When the light faded, Ghost collapsed. Weak and trembling, Jace caught him, falling to his knees. Hey, stay with me, he said, voice breaking. You did good, kid. You did real good. Ghost opened one eye and gave a small chirp before going still. The commander stepped forward slowly, armor cracked, eyes blazing with anger. You have doomed yourself, human. Jace looked up at him, his face streaked with dirt and rain. Yeah, he said, standing shakily. But I saved him. He grabbed the plasma torch hanging from his belt and ignited it. The blue flame hissed. And that's what humans do. They fought under the dying storm. Jace moved with everything he had left: pain, love, and stubborn hope. The commander was stronger, faster, but Jace was clever. He dodged, used the terrain, and struck whenever he could. Sparks lit the dark sky. When it was over, the commander lay defeated, his armor smoking. Jace stood over him, barely breathing. Go home, he said. Tell them humanity isn't done yet. The alien glared at him, then turned away, limping toward his ship. The other soldiers followed in silence. As their ship lifted off, the acid clouds began to clear. Jace fell to his knees beside Ghost. The hatchling stirred weakly. Blinking at the light breaking through the clouds, Jace smiled through the pain. Hey there, little one. Look, it's the sun, for the first time in centuries. Sunlight touched Arcan 9. It shone on the broken metal planes, the wrecks, and the human and hatchling sitting together in the warmth. Jace whispered, We made it, kid. Just you and me, Ghost chirped softly, curling against his arm. And though the storm had taken everything else from them, it could never take away what they had found: hope, friendship, and the courage to stand for something good. Above them, the beacon light still burned, sending one message into the endless dark: human mechanic Jace Renner, requesting aid. One survivor with me. The sky above Arca 9 was clear for the first time in living memory. Golden light poured through the clouds, washing over the plains where acid once burned everything it touched. Pools of clean water shimmered like glass across the metal ground. The world was quiet. Jace Renner sat near the edge of a broken ridge, his coat torn, his hands wrapped in bandages. Beside him lay the small creature he had saved, the albino hatchling named Ghost. Its pale scales reflected the new sunlight, glowing faintly with silver warmth. For days, they had stayed hidden among the wrecks, waiting. The Zolthori ships had not returned. Maybe they had given up. Maybe they were afraid of whatever power Ghost had released that day. Jace didn't know. He only knew he was tired. He looked down at the hatchling. You know, he said softly, I've seen a lot of storms, but I've never seen one end like that. Ghost blinked, making a small chirp that sounded like laughter. Its wounds were healing, but slowly. Jace had done everything he could with the scraps of his medkit. He smiled faintly. You really are something else, kid. Every evening, Jace fixed the beacon. The signal had to keep transmitting, if not for rescue, then at least to tell the universe that someone had survived. He replaced broken wires, adjusted the dish, and hoped someone was listening. Ghost always sat nearby, watching. Sometimes, it would bring him bits of metal or wire, as if trying to help. Other times, it would simply sit and hum softly, a sound that echoed through the quiet plains. One morning, the beacon light changed. It blinked 3 times, paused, then blinked again. A response code. Jace froze. Someone heard us, he whispered. They're coming. He turned to Ghost, excitement shining in his tired eyes. We're getting off this rock. Ghost tilted its head, as if trying to understand. Jace knelt beside it. There's a ship on the way. They'll pick us up. You'll be safe, Ghost. You'll see stars, oceans, and blue skies. Real ones. The hatchling made a soft, happy sound, nuzzling his hand. For the first time in years, Jace allowed himself to believe things might be okay. But far above the planet, a shadow moved. It was not a rescue ship. It was Zolthori command vessel, large and dark, circling the sky. The signal Jace had sent had reached them to Dot in their control chamber. The same commander who had fought Jace stood before the viewing window. His armor was cracked and blackened, his eyes hard. The human lives, one of his officers said. And the hatchling is with him. The commander looked at the clouds below, silent for a long moment. Prepare descent, he said at last. We will finish this ourselves. Jace was repairing his rifle when the air began to hum. He looked up, his heart sinking. No, not again. The Zolthori ship broke through the clouds, descending fast. Ghost hissed softly, its scales flashing with light. Run, Jace said, grabbing his gear. We can't fight that. He ran toward the canyon, Ghost close behind. The ground shook as the ship landed. From its ramp stepped the commander, his armor glowing faintly red. You cannot escape, human. The commander said, his voice echoing through the valley. Jace turned. Didn't I tell you last time? Humans don't know how to quit. The commander's eyes narrowed. You protect a creature that will one day rule over you. Why? Because someone had to show him what mercy looks like, Jace said simply. You call him property. I call him family. For a moment, the alien's gaze softened just a little. But then his voice turned cold again. Then you will die with your family. He raised his weapon. Before he could fire, a sudden pulse of energy filled the air. Ghost stepped forward, its wings spreading wide. The light coming from its body grew brighter and brighter until the whole canyon glowed silver. The commander hesitated. What is this? Ghost lifted its head, letting out a low, haunting cry. The light reached the ship, its engines, its weapons. Everything stopped. The acid clouds above dissolved completely, revealing a deep blue sky no one had seen in centuries. Jace shielded his eyes. Ghost, you're doing this again, aren't you? He took a step forward, his voice shaking. Stop! You'll burn yourself out. The hatchling looked at him, and for a moment, Jace swore he saw understanding in those silver eyes. Ghost chirped one soft, gentle and then spread its wings fully. The energy wave lifted from the ground, sweeping across the valley. The Zolthori ship's systems went dark. The commander fell to his knees, staring at the small creature glowing brighter than a star. When the light faded, Ghost lay still on the ground. Jace ran forward, kneeling beside him. His hands trembled as he lifted the small body. "Come on, kid," he whispered. "Don't do this. You hear me? You're okay. You're okay." But Ghost didn't move. The commander stood a few meters away, silent. His weapon hung loosely at his side. The acid storm had ended. His ship was dead. And before him stood a human who had done the impossible. He looked at Jace for a long moment, then spoke quietly. "That hatchling changed the atmosphere. The acid is gone. You have purified a world that our kind has poisoned for centuries." Jace looked up at him, his voice breaking. "No, he did." The commander lowered his head slightly. "Perhaps your way is stronger than ours." Without another word, he turned and walked back to his ship. His soldiers followed in silence. The engines flickered weakly as they lifted off into the blue sky. Jace stayed there, holding Ghost in his arms. The wind was gentle now. The rain that fell was clean, soft, cool, and harmless. Weeks later, a true rescue ship arrived. A human crew in white armor found Jace near the ridge, weak but alive. They carried him aboard, and as the engines roared to life, he looked down at the planet one last time. It was green, now tiny patches of life growing where there had once been only rust. He smiled faintly. "You did it, kid," he whispered. "You fixed the world." Years later, stories spread across the stars. Tales of a human mechanic who had defied an empire. Tales of a small albino hatchling who had turned acid to rain, hate to peace. Among the Zolthori, the legend grew into law. The Empress Ghost's first ever name was said to have been born of both human mercy and alien strength. She rebuilt her people's cities, taught them kindness, and ended the old wars. And in every ship she built, in every colony she founded, there was one rule carved into metal plates in both human standard and Zolthori script. No life left behind, ever. Beneath those words, a name was always written in small letters in honor of Jace Renner, the mechanic who ran through acid rain. Centuries later, when children asked who the first human hero was, their teachers would tell them the story of the storm, the one where a lonely man saved a small creature no one else cared about. And whenever acid rain threatened the colonies, filters across the worlds activated automatically, powered by the same kind of shield once created by a pale hatchling on Arcan 9. People called it the Renner Field. It was a gift that kept on saving lives long after its maker was gone. In the quiet halls of a museum orbiting Arcan 9, a small display sat near the entrance, a burn coat, a broken wrench, and a faintly glowing silver scale. The plaque beneath read, "For every storm, there is someone who runs through it." Outside, rain fell again, gentle, clean, and full of life.